Hi, this is Teddy, and you're listening to Lindsey Boylan on Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast Podcast Network.
Are you listening?
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast family of podcasts, and I am on today with Lindsey Boylan, who is running for Congress in the New York 10th District. Hi, Lindsey.
Hi. So nice to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. So start us off, just tell me a little bit about your background and why you're running for Congress.
Absolutely. So I'm the daughter of a Marine and a mom who had her first kid at 16 as a single mother. So two really tough parents who, really wanted the best for me and my sister and the American dream for their kids. I grew up originally in San Diego, moved to Virginia, part of that whole defense and military, upbringing. I went to college in Massachusetts and at Wellesley as a big feminist and fan of Hillary Clinton. She inspired me to go there. And then I came to New York, and I've been a public servant for pretty much my whole adult life, having started in urban planning and parks management in the city, and then moving on to the state of New York, working directly, ultimately, for the governor as a Secretary for Economic Development and Housing. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a wonderful husband. And really everything I'm doing is focused on how to make the future better for my daughter than what I'm seeing right now in this moment in time. And, I would say probably of this moment in time and people running and getting in the process of challenging incumbency and Democrats like I am in this case, it's more about how do we actually make the changes that we need? The 10th Congressional District, by different accounts, is the most unequal district in the country. So it includes Wall Street, and it includes some of the wealthiest areas in the country. And then we have thousands of people living in substandard conditions in NYCHA, which is as public housing in New York City, some of which are without heat and hot water for long periods of time during the winter. Right now, I just posted an article about that. It's not enough to continue politics as usual. We need serious transformation in dealing with extreme inequality, dealing with climate change, and then a third problem for me that I hear a lot about and I care a lot about is mental health, in addition to physical health. And all of these things we've been talking about for a long time, but we haven't been acting on them. And I think it's really going to require a whole new generation of leaders to advance on the issues and the problems of our day. I'll give you one quick example. I, worked for the state of New York and helped negotiate hundreds of millions of dollars to go to NYCHA, as I mentioned, New York City's public housing in the last legislative cycle that I was there. And that felt like a win. It felt like we were moving towards improving the reality of people living in public housing. But the real reality is we need tens of billions of dollars to fix NYCHA, and that needs to come from the federal government. So much of the conversation for the last decade, at least, has been an absence of the city and the state leadership, or an absence of the federal leadership and the city and the state leading. And we really need a federal government that works. We need a Congress that can make dealing with these big issues actionable. And that's why I'm running.
So talk to me some about campaigning in an urban environment. I think a lot about this. I live in a pretty urban area in the south side of Chicago, and it's very different than sort of driving from house to house and knocking on doors. What does that look like? How do you reach people? How do you make sure that they know what you're doing in your campaign and get them excited about voting?
Every way possible. I mean, it's a mix of throwing every kind of solution to interact with people. So to your point, it's not always easy to get into buildings, some of the big buildings. I've been kicked out of a few. You have to be sort of tenacious about it. But beyond being just an urban district, this is a very gerrymandered district. So we have everything from Columbia University on the Upper West Side, and then it runs all the way on the West Side in Lower Manhattan and jumps over into Brooklyn and includes as far as Borough Park. And so I'm at subway entrances, public spaces, increasingly will be in the new year as we get closer to the primary, I am knocking on doors wherever I can, and then finding different ways to engage with people, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's online, being at various community events, community board meetings, any and every way that we can to communicate, what we're trying to achieve, that we're trying to deal with extreme inequality through housing and healthcare changes and respond to climate change. Having spent a lot of my career in working through the city and working for the state, I have some of that connectivity, and it's really all about continuing to every day be out there. And that's how you win, I think, particularly in a challenger race, is showing up at every possible thing, whether it's something in the mental health community and nonprofits that I engage with. And that's the fun part, honestly. And there's a lot of stuff about, fundraising, call time, the back and forth of politics that can sort of bog you down. The most fun, the most meaningful experiences I have are interacting with people. And I've had some really powerful experiences. It's why I'm running, and it sort of inspires you to keep going. It's fun, as challenging as it is.
And so what are people saying when you talk to them? Do people think about congressional races? Are they excited about 2020? I assume a lot of people are thinking sort of presidential race and maybe not so much on congressional races. But, are they engaging on the issues? Are they excited?
Yeah, no, I think, there's no question that this is a time where everyone I interact with is glued to what's happening, whether it be discussions around holding Donald Trump accountable, with impeachment yesterday, of course, and it's going to go over to the Senate. People are, if not watching, they're hearing and reading and staying up to date about what's happening on the national stage. And certainly with the presidential race and the debates, there's a lot of interest and appetite for constant media around that. What I would say that I found not really surprising, but reinforces, what I started with is when I knock on a door, even if people are voting, regularly, so these are active people in our community in terms of the electoral process, they're not thinking about who's my member of Congress, who's my member of city council, who's my state senator, who's my state assembly person. They're thinking about who is helping me with my problems, who is trying to respond to the things that are creating a problem or a challenge for me and my community. And so they'll talk about the housing crisis and the cost of living here, which happens to be the number one issue in every one of my community boards in the district. They're concerned about climate change, and they're not so interested in getting into the specifics about who is their leader in what different body. They want problems solved. And frankly, that's why I'm running, because I spent all of this time, my whole career, working in the city and then working in the state, trying to grapple with problems to make our city and our district work better in various ways. But at the end of the day, we need to see the solutions, and we need a federal government that works. And that, of the whole, life cycle of politics and the different roles that people have, is the part that is the most ineffective. We're not seeing change. And so when I knock on doors, even if people have been, voting for the sitting congressman for the last several election cycles, very rarely do I get someone who says, I'm committed to voting for Congressman Nadler. What they say is, this is what I care about. Are you going to address that? And how are you going to do that? This is what has not been responded to. This is what my family is struggling with. Are you going to be here? Are you going to show up every day? Are you going to be in this community so you know exactly what we need, and you're going to advocate for that and make changes in DC? And so I'm running against someone who's not had a serious challenge pretty much in his 30-year career. I'm running to be the first woman to represent the district, even though this is a liberal district, in 50 years. And I think when people see that, because there hasn't been a challenge, they're sometimes getting their door knocked for their member of Congress for the first time. In many cases, that's the reality. And so they're excited to tell me what they need to see changed. So I've been pretty excited by that. To your point, it's, a lot of door knocking or a lot of creativity in finding ways to get to people's doors. But once I get there, I've been, so moved by how much people really want their leaders to listen and to act on what they tell them.
So you're an alum of the Vote Run Lead program.
Yes.
Tell me some about how it helps to have that training and that network, and especially when you're running for office as a woman, taking on a man who's been in Congress for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hugely helpful. Everyone from their leadership and Aaron have been enormously helpful, supportive. The basics of women running for office is that we may consider it, but it takes a very long time to actually do it because there are all these barriers to thinking it's possible. It's this sense of who should run for office. Do I have enough preparation? Am I there? Am I compelling enough? There's a tremendous amount, unfortunately, that goes into, the self-doubt that keeps women out of the process, the incumbency, thinking that there's no way to get around all of the challenges that keep women and moms like myself from running. And having come together with, in my training, a huge group of women from every background with many moms like myself, like yourself, it was inspiring. And I continue to connect with them. I'm always invited to things. And I've made friends with women that I met there who are also running. I met a few fellow candidates who are running in Congress in the city, and we're in this battle together. I mean, it is a battle. We need to see significant changes, not just in the policies we make, but also in who's making the decisions in halls of power, in rooms that matter. And the only way to do that is to have a critical mass of people who really believe like you do and that I do, who are, wanting to see change. And that's exactly what Vote Run Lead is. They've been infinitely supportive, and I've just been so appreciative of that.
So you mentioned you have a 5-year-old. I have a 5-year-old as well, and I know that can be an exciting and sometimes challenging age. So how do you involve your daughter in your campaign? How do you deal with having a young child and campaigning at the same time? And what sorts of recommendations would you have for other moms of school-age kids who are thinking about this?
Sure. Well, we all know as moms that and as parents that our kids are not a one-size-fits-all. So I preface this by saying I have a very outgoing daughter who loves to be in the limelight and loves to be engaged in things. So, I mean, she was with me at the impeachment rally the evening of impeachment, and she comes with me to so many community events. She loves it. She loves meeting people. She loves that engagement. I actually picked her up from school yesterday, and her teacher said, "Oh, she was chanting, about Donald Trump's impeachment." I thought to myself, "Wow, she's 5 and she's already an activist on her own terms." I think that's wonderful, mainly because that's who she is. That's her expression of it, and being engaged with what I'm doing and how she finds meaning in it. But I have to say, I took her with me to vote in 2016, and in 2018, I always take her with me, and to explain to her what has been happening in our country, not just under Donald Trump, but in very extreme ways, very visible ways, even to a 5-year-old under Donald Trump, the racism, the hatred, all the policies that have, they make their way into even a 5-year-old's life experience. And so for me and for her and I to have this opportunity to be together, and for her to be engaged in what I'm doing and seeing me find ways to fight back on what I view as tremendous unfairness in this country with Donald Trump and beyond Donald Trump, some of the extreme inequality, I'm so proud. And seeing her be a part of that inspires me. To be candid, running for office, running for Congress on any level is, in any sort of district, I would assume, is a real challenge. And that's what I hear. I'm running to replace a long-term incumbent who's been there for a very long time. It's not, you don't wake up every day and feel like it's a day at the beach. And what inspires me is seeing my daughter and knowing that it's for her and her generation why I'm doing this. Like I grew up right on the edge of the middle class. I got many more opportunities than my parents because of their hard work and because of the infrastructure and the social safety net of this country. And I worry very much that is disappearing. I see it in my extended family that they are not getting, kids growing up, graduating from high school now, don't have the same outlook. that I had of opportunity and ability to improve my life and to make something of it. And I refuse to sit silently and let that be the new reality for the next generation. I mean, some of the statistics I'm sure you hear and are alarming to all of us. You know, the bottom 20%, economically speaking, of kids has a less than 10% chance of doing better than their parents. Forget getting into the middle class, forget any sort of, larger metric, just doing better than their parents. If there's anything that says the American dream, it's that our kids will do better than we have or have the opportunity to do that. And there's so many indicators, whether we talk about health or home ownership or ability to make a living, to have good paying jobs that have a safety net. All of these things, the big thing I haven't mentioned thus far so much, climate change. It's all of these things are real issues that having my daughter see what I'm doing just gives me more, inspiration to keep going, because she and your children, this is why I'm doing it. It's in spite of how challenging it is to run for office as a mom, she's why I'm doing it. And I do bring her with me everywhere I can. I go back to her personality because this is for her. I only have one right now. Someday I hope to have another kid. They may be different personalities, but it works for her and it works for me. And she's more outgoing than I am. So sometimes when I look at her and I see what she's doing, I say, oh, if she's out there, being a ham, I got to get out and meet as many people as I can. So that's how our relationship works between she and I. And it's a lot of fun. It's been one of the most poignant parts of my life.
You probably did not expect when you got into this that you would be referenced in a letter by the president, a deranged, odd letter. What was that experience like?
Well, it's funny. I mean, this is one of those examples, going back to what you just asked me. I was picking my daughter up from school because she loves when I can do that. It's, it's just fun for her and me. And we're walking and I start getting these emails and text messages saying, the president is talking about you, he's saying you're this bizarre socialist. Or I was like, and she and I usually, when I pick her up, go to get ice cream. So I try to be normal and not really react to any of it. We get to the diner, we get ice cream. And then she said, Mom, can I have your phone so I can play Play-Doh games? And I said, no, I have to do something right now. And I try to be as honest as I can. I said, well, the president, he mentioned me. And she said, what? Donald Trump mentioned you? He's a bad man. I mean, that's what she said. But, trying to explain it in the context of everything that's going on, I don't go too much into it with her, but it was one of those surreal moments in my life where, it's just very clear that he's grappling at straws. It's very clear that he's looking for anyone, this president, to blame but himself for the exact situation that he's in. And that's really unfortunate. It's just another great example of why he needs to be impeached, because he's the kind of person who cannot be held accountable of his own accord, will never accept responsibility. And it was, it's bizarre but not surprising that he tries to use scare tactics, particularly aimed at women who are speaking out in any way, shape, or form to advance his goals. That's sort of his standard practice, right? To call me this, sort of paint a broad brush of all of the socialists who are leading the party in a certain direction, and that's why this is happening to him. It's bizarre. You gotta laugh that that's how intimidated he is by women and by what's happening to him, and he sort of shows his cards in that way. So it wasn't scary at all. It was sort of very bizarre. But, I did have a moment where I said, well, the pressure that I and many, many other people like yourself have been applying to push for accountability and to push for impeachment has been working. And he's seen it and his party's seen it, and it won't be forgotten. Of course, now we know we're moving forward with impeachment. And so, it was a surreal day and at the same time, good. I'm glad he's felt the pressure. I'm glad that he's seen what we've been doing on our videos and talking about all of the abuse of his office, the inhumane treatment that he's been sanctioning along the border. It means that has reached him, and I am glad. So.
So if our listeners would like to help out your campaign, what are some ways they can do that?
Well, thank you so much. Well, the way we're going to win this is by getting our message out there and visibility. I think we're moving very much in that direction. And as much as people can continue to, talk about everything we're doing, if journalists can cover our race and cover all the important issues that we're trying to address, from housing to climate change to mental health, that is really important. If people can donate to our campaign, we're going in probably the most critical period for the next 6 months as we really dig in deep in field ops. And that just means, for layman's terms, as you said, knocking on every door, meeting every potential voter as much as they can. And I think, there are many reasons to vote for change at this moment in time, and vote for someone who's spent their career in public service and is really focused on addressing extreme inequality and climate change. And I think it would also be real nice to see the first woman elected since Bella Abzug in this district in 50 years, in the district that includes the Statue of Liberty, in the district that includes so many cultural, economic, historic, important aspects of not just New York, but also our country. And we're going to fight the whole way. And I've been very inspired by, all the support that we've received in everything from Twitter, in person, in our community. And if people can keep carrying our message and support us financially, they can do it on our website, lindseyboylan.com. And we're so appreciative of every opportunity to talk about, the changes we need to see.
And when is the primary?
June 23rd, 2020.
It's so confusing in a presidential year, especially in New York.
New York.
Is New York going to have 3 primaries this year? It's
Yeah, no, it's very confusing. And part of that, let me say one thing. The Democratic establishment, not just in New York, but in across the country, has made things confusing and complicated by design to really keep the same group of people making decisions for all of us in power. And one of the great benefits that we had of electing a lot of new leaders in the state legislature this past year in New York was some election law changes. That means that we've consolidated the primaries outside of the presidential primary this year. So everyone who's voting in a primary outside of voting for president will vote on June 23rd. What it used to be, and in New York, people will vote for president on I think it's April 28th. So that will be a few months before, and then we'll be the top of the ticket vote that people come out to vote on the primary in June. But historically, there were all these different dates. So only people who had a lot of flexibility in their schedule could come out to do it, and they had to do it on that date. Now we'll have, because of, as I mentioned, these electoral changes, early voting, no-fault absentee voting. We tried that out this past election cycle in November, and it went very well. And those are just going to be, these changes are really going to help candidates like myself innovate and reach people. And it's going to get people like myself who didn't always have time, a lot of flexibility, or my husband to go vote that one day, that they can get in and get to vote. So it's going to be a lot easier for people to actually cast their ballots this time around.
All right. Excellent. Well, that is very good news.
Yes.
Not everything goes right in Illinois, but at least we have just one primary date. Everything happens on one day.
Yeah. Well, Illinois and New York have historically had very strong machine politics, Democratic Party, and at least in Chicago and in New York City primarily is what I'm talking about. And I think the more changes we make to make it easier for everyone to vote, the better off we're all going to be, and the better policies we make, and the more reflective our leaders will be of the districts and the demographics that they represent.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And, of course, we love seeing moms run for office, so that's fantastic. We'll put your information up on our website if people want to check it out.
I would love that. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all you're doing to make the changes we need.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.